This podcast is a recording of the KC Secular AA speaker meeting held every Saturday night at 8 o'clock p.m. at HJ's Youth and Community Center, 6425 Warnell Road, Kansas City, Missouri. This is episode 7, and our speaker is Tom S.
Welcome to the Secular Speaker Meeting. I'm Simon and I'm an alcoholic. I've asked Emily to read the preamble.
AA is a fellowship of people who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover. We have no dues or fees for membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help others to achieve sobriety.
Our secular group attempts to maintain a tradition of free expression and conduct a meeting where all may feel free to express any doubts or disbeliefs that they may have and to share their own personal form of spiritual experience, their search for it, or their rejection of it. In keeping with AA tradition, we do not endorse or oppose any form of religion or atheism. Our only wish is to help those who want recovery without having to accept anyone else's beliefs or having to deny their own. We'll pass around the basket during the meeting for standard affair. Nobody new. Well, is there anybody who would like to introduce themselves who's new to the meeting? Okay. We recognize extended periods of sobriety. Is there anybody celebrating any extended periods of sobriety? All right. We're going to start off with our speaker, Tom, here for 20 to 30 minutes, and then we'll pass the mic around, and if you'd like to participate in the conversation, and you can do so when you get the mic. You're welcome to talk about anything that you'd like if you've got something that doesn't have anything to do with Tom or whatever else we've been talking about. If you want something you need to get off your chest, feel free to do that then. If you don't want to be included in the podcast and you do want to share, go ahead and either, don't take the mic or just let us know afterwards and we will remove it before it's ever published. Or if you think of something that you said that you need edited out. Otherwise, we'll hang around and chat after the meeting, and this is an open meeting, although I recognize everybody here tonight. Anybody is welcome. I think that does it. Tom, do you want to take it from here?
Sure.
All right.
Okay, well, thanks for coming, everyone, and my name is Tom, and I'm an addict. And that's probably one of the things that I want to address first is that I'm always a little bit hesitant to speak at an AA meeting because I don't have a drinking history that is going to be very involved, but it was almost exclusively drugs for me. And I apologize if that, if because of that you can't relate or anything like that. But so I grew up in a small town in South Alabama, about 10,000 people, and so pretty normal, elementary school and high school, and I had always had a girlfriend all through elementary school, and really I did all through high school, but along about puberty I began to realize my attraction to other boys, men. So when in my town, when you leave sixth grade, you go straight to high school. So and I was just terrified of this going to high school because in the seventh grade you have all grades. I had seniors in my physical education class when I was in high school. I was in the 7th grade. And the rumor was that the 7th graders were all going to have their pants ripped off and run up the flagpole. And so that was a fear too. However, soon I began to enjoy physical education as, it was a chance for me to peer at other boys and everything, and I was kind of realizing that what I was hoping it was a phase, but I didn't know anything about it or anything like that. So, I was hoping that it might go away one day and that everybody, maybe everybody goes through a phase like this. But it didn't go away, and of course, I've always joked that in my town, like being gay would be, akin to, or let me put it this way. I always used to say that the guy who robbed the liquor store and shot the clerk would be more respected than a gay person in my town. So, of course, I kept that all quiet, and and whether, and this will this will come up because it has, my story has a lot to do with, my story with drugs has a lot to do with sex. So, in college, I smoked some marijuana in my freshman year, but I didn't get off. But finally, I kind of came out in my, the summer of between my junior and senior year in college, and, had sex for the first time, and started going to Atlanta. I went to school at Auburn, which is in Alabama, and it's about 2 hours from Atlanta. So I started going to Atlanta a lot, so I would go to Atlanta on Friday night, stay till the bars closed, and then come back, go to a football game on Saturday, then go back to Atlanta on Saturday night and stay till the bars closed. Like rolling down windows and doing all kinds of things to keep myself awake while I was doing all that driving. But I just got, I was given pot. And so in my senior year, I got off on pot, and I had been drinking, and I noticed, all during my fraternity parties and all that other guys seemed to get a lot more fun out of it than I did, because I would get, when I got to where I could feel it, I would enjoy it for about an hour or so, and then I'd get really hungry and I'd want to eat, and then I'd want to go to sleep. And then the next day, it was always at least a 24-hour recovery for me. There was no question about, after I had been drunk, was I going to go to class the next day or anything like that. I was praying to the porcelain goddess the entire day. So when I discovered pot, that was like, oh, now I've got something that I can do at parties. But immediately, my friends changed. And this was back in, 1973, 74. And it was kind of like, it'd be kind of like, so, okay, I became a person that you were cool if you smoked pot. And, you kind of would say, hey, do you smoke? Oh, yeah, I smoke, all this kind of stuff. And so, but I abandoned my other friends. And so I was in ROTC in college. And so I immediately went into the Air Force right after college. I was a pretty big whoop-de-doo in ROTC in college. I was like the cadet commander of Air Force, Army, Navy, ROTC for this big presentation, celebration, and all this kind of stuff, even though I had begun smoking pot and hitting the gay bars on the weekends. And so when I got into the Air Force, I was in pilot training, and so while I was flying these planes with an instructor and all that kind of stuff, I thought, this is not going to be a very good pot smoking job. So I began to think about, well, okay, now what do I want to do, that would be a good pot smoking job? And so, and immediately, by the way, when I started smoking pot, I never expected as much from me after that. It was like my whole self-esteem, or what I thought that I might become, all of that was never the same. So I was thinking, truck driver, I bet that would be a good pot smoking job, especially since I seemed to have a joint everywhere I went in the car, which is ridiculous. So, Douglas, maybe you can identify with that. I mean, because it's just, it's dangerous for that too. But it seemed like a good idea at the time. So I eliminated myself from pilot training and became an administrative officer. And but right the night before I started pilot training, I need to go back. That was I was stationed in Selma, Alabama, of all places, and I used to go to Atlanta on the weekends. And so I was at this guy who let me stay at his house when I would go to Atlanta, and he was having a party, and he gave me, there was a little bit of powder on the end of a knife, and he gave it to me just to swallow. And so that was when I first discovered meth. And we never mentioned the word meth back then. We always called it crystal, a nice sounding word. And so I thought, and I identify, here's the point where I identify a lot with people whose drug of choice is alcohol, because immediately I thought, where has this been all my life? I know what's wrong with me. This must be how normal people feel. And so I was, I felt better looking. I was a better conversationalist. I had deep conversations that night with people that I couldn't stand. I just thought this was, I've said this before, so what's wrong with me is I've been suffering from a meth deficiency, a crystal deficiency. And so I thought that was the answer. And of course, it turned on me. I got caught during in the Air Force with a test, a urine test. They called it Operation Golden Flow. And so I got caught, and I lied my way out. The base commander called me in, and he said, there were two positives in the test, and Lieutenant Sawyer, one of them was yours. And I go, mine? Why? He said, well, you tested positive for amphetamine. So I go, amphetamine? What could that be? And I said, oh, well, I was in Vancouver. I was stationed in Upper Washington State, right on the Canadian border. I said, well, I was in Vancouver the other last week, and I was going to go skiing the next day, and a guy gave me this diet pill. He said, he said, take this and you won't be tired. And and I said, I thought a diet pill was just something you could buy. I didn't know that it was anything wrong with that. Just lying through my teeth the whole time, knowing exactly what it was. But so I had to pee for a month in the, every week for a month. But I did, get myself out of that. But even, during that month, I was thinking of all kind of ways, like how could I scheme to be able to do some crystal and not get caught in the urinalysis. But after I got out of the Air Force, I went to graduate school, and I was only there a couple of quarters, and then I dropped out, and I moved to Atlanta, which is where my disease really took off, and where I found that I could purchase purchase it for a pretty cheap price. And so there it began to affect my work. And in 1980, I went to my first meeting, and it was an NA meeting, and I was talking about this the other night. I think that I couldn't identify with anybody in that meeting, and it was a smoke-filled room, and people brought their children who they needed to bring their children in order to get to a meeting. And, so I looked down on them for bringing children into a smoky room like that. And, and I hated the part where you said, "I'm Joe and I'm an addict," and everybody goes, "Hi, Joe." I thought that was just cheesy. But anyway, I went to meetings on and off, and finally, in 1986, I went to treatment. And I went to a treatment center that a lot of medical people went to. And after the treatment, it was a 30-day treatment, and I went into a halfway house, and this is not the halfway house like you might think is a halfway house where you have to pay dearly to get into it. And then there was a three-quarter house, which meant that you could work. So I did all of that, and I began a period of sobriety that lasted for I think around 17 years. And this was started in 1986. I met some people in treatment that I became close with. And I moved to Kansas City after I had celebrated 1 year sober and started going to meetings in Kansas City. I go to Live and Let Live. And the main meeting that I went to here was on Friday night. And down at there's a church, Grace and Holy Trinity. You saw me there, I think. And it was a meeting where nobody new ever came in, and we would talk for a few minutes. And unless something was bothering anybody, we would adjourn to the Chinese restaurant, which was down the street from where we met. And I mean, it was kind of good because a lot of good talk. A lot of good recovery comes in the coffees and the dinners after the meeting and all of that. But anyway, so And I had a good job. I was working for Sprint here, and so I had kind of a meteoric rise through the ranks of Sprint and was making good money. And so at some point, I started sobriety started losing its priority with me, and I started thinking about all of how sex was not that great, and I wasn't having any. I wasn't motivated to go out to have any, and I was thinking, here I am, a red-blooded American gay male, and it's Saturday night, and I don't even want to go out and hunt on the hunt. So, eventually, that's what took me back out. I decided that I deserved it. I've been sober for a long time, and I deserved it. And so it started kind of with a drug that I was being prescribed for. I started taking antidepressants with Prozac back in 1990. It did wonders for me. I did not continue talk therapy because I thought, okay, this is what I needed, so I don't need to do that anymore. So it was extremely helpful, but not helpful enough that, and I wasn't involved in the program enough for it to keep me sober. So I was prescribed this. I asked for if there was anything for ADD that wasn't addictive, and so they prescribed this drug for me. and I won't even tell you the name of it, so I won't give anybody any ideas. And it was, but anyway, I started with 1 a day and then 2 a day, and 2 a day was my dosage. And, pretty soon I was taking 8 a day and so on. And I was, telling the pharmacist that I needed to refill because I was going out of town. And, so I became addicted to this drug. And I finally told the psychiatrist that. And, it turns out that this particular drug for people who are addicted to crystal methadone, it kind of mimics the effect of that. So, but that took me back out to crystal. So, I stayed out a few years, and along about 2007, I was not doing well at work. I had a meteoric rise, and I was beginning to miss assignments. I was beginning to show up late, and I had a talking to from Human Resources and my manager about what was going on. And I said, I realized that, I'll straighten up, all this kind of stuff. And so there was this test that I was trying to pass this test for project management. It's called the PMP. And when I failed that test for the 3rd time, I finally decided to confess to Sprint what was going on because, I was an excellent student, like summa cum laude, all this kind of stuff. And each time I thought I had passed this test with flying colors. So I didn't want them to think I was stupid, so I finally told them that I was, addicted and all this kind of stuff, and I went to treatment, and Sprint was going to have layoffs around that time, and it was the year that I had this particular issue, and performance was going to be what the layoffs were based on, so I decided that I would take a package, which meant that I could volunteer to be laid off, and ended up getting paid for a year not to work. So, which was just a wonderful time to use when you didn't have to be anywhere in the morning, and you could be sick and not go to work, but nobody was expecting you or anything. And I was going to do all this stuff like work on my recovery and my acting and all this while I was not working. And it turned out that it just got really, really, really bad. So I tried several times to go back to meetings, and I would get a few months put together. And finally, in 2008, right, in July of 2008, after a bender of about 4 days, you keep going. You don't want to stop. You don't want to sleep. I called my old sponsor and told him that I wanted to quit. He immediately fired me, and he told me who that I thought should be my sponsor. Who he thought should be my sponsor. I thought it was a terrible idea, but it was kind of a turning point for me because it was the first time that I actually did anything that I was told to do that I didn't think that was the way I wanted to work my program. So I asked the person that he told to be my sponsor. So that started this period of sobriety. Now, this period of sobriety is much better for me than any period of sobriety that I've, all during that 17 years, I was probably maybe sober for 5 to 7 years of that, and then maybe dry drunk the rest of the time. I just wasn't using. But this time, things began to click for me, and it took a long time. It took over a year before the psychic change happened, where I started working at Garmin, and some of you have heard me tell this before, but I hated my job at Garmin, and my supervisor, when we did our first annual review, he asked me what were my goals for the next year, and I said to get another job. And I've had some level promotions, but basically, 10 years later, I am still doing that same job at Garmin. And along about a little over a year, I began to think about how I liked the people I was working with and how I was helping people, because I was helping people with their products that they were having problems with. And I had a lot of, when I was at Sprint, I was on projects that lasted years, and then they would decide, you'd be 2 years into it and they'd decide it was a loser. And, but from a business case perspective, and so they would just cancel it. So I had, each call for me to a customer was a chance for to end something, to start something, and finish something every day. So, and then about, I can't remember how long ago, if it was 3 or 4 years ago, I found this group. And I kind of was looking for this group because at my home group, which was Live and Let Live, every now and then they would get this wild hair and decide that they needed to be true to AA and not have any addicts at the meeting and stuff. So I started looking for it, and I remember going to John and talking to John about it. And I think even when I wasn't here, maybe you talked to other people about, whether you thought that would be okay. And so I'm extremely grateful for the fact that you guys let me come here to an AA meeting and say that I'm an addict and participate and reap the benefits of it. I say that during this period of sobriety, the part of the promises that has come true for me is the part about we will comprehend the word serenity and we will know peace. So, being a card-carrying speed freak, when I first started in AA, the serenity just didn't sound like anything that I really wanted anyway. That was like quiet and sitting in a rocking chair on the front porch and all that kind of stuff. But, I finally, in this period of sobriety, learned that peace, I describe it as having peace, whether I'm in an activity or, doing mundane things. My dogs have meant a lot to me. I've had spiritual connections with my dogs. And so I've just really enjoyed being sober, especially during the time that I've been here. Now, it's not a bed of roses, and in fact, in the last few months, I've been feeling squirrely, and I need to start doing some things that have gotten. I need to stop some bad habits that have gotten back a hold of me, like procrastination. I need to do my hobbies more. And because I'm finding myself at home with a lot of time to think. And as we all know, we were talking about the saying "think, think, think" at the Friday meeting yesterday, and we were talking about how I think every one of us kind of agreed that that "think, think, think" slogan wasn't too advisable. And I know what you probably mean is like think it through. And when they say think, 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 but that comes across to me as like sit around and think, and which is it's like I really do better if I am not thinking, So for me to be distracted. And distracted with things I like. I like my work, and I like golf. I like my acting. I need to get more involved in that. But and I'm not in any kind of danger at the moment of using, but I'm not overconfident either. I know that at some point I could be presented with an opportunity, and have a hard time turning it down. But I don't know. Am I at 20 minutes yet, or am I short? Am I short of that?
You can go on for another 10 or.
Oh, I'm about. I think I'm about done. I just want to thank this group. I love this group and the Freethinkers meeting. It's been a tremendous help for me, and I love all of you people that come to these meetings, and I think I'll pass.
Thank you, Tom. And I guess to each their own. I've always been bewildered by groups who would kick people out, and it's a shame anybody's kicked you out. I've always loved hearing you and learning from you. At this point, we will pass the mic around. I've just been doing it in a circle. We'll just do that and go from there.
My name's Lee, and I'm an alcoholic. And I just want to echo your last point about the danger of doing too much think. It's really something that I think I find with sponsees, particularly when I'm trying to get them to concentrate on certain things or certain issues that I've learned the hard way from myself and then from other people, that too much time can be spent thinking, and thinking then leads to a very emotionally downward state, and that doesn't help anybody. So thank you for bringing that point out. I think it's a good one, and applies to a lot of things, Tom.
Hello, I'm Emily, and I'm an alcoholic, and I'll pass tonight.
I'm Greg, and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Greg.
I do remember those Chinese dinners after the very short meeting, and that was fun. I wasn't involved very long in that because I had to go to California right away after I started that. But I'm really glad that you joined us over here too, because I do remember well. That was my main meeting was live and let live. And I really never suffered from people's attitudes or telling me what to do or not to do, or that I had to be on my knees. But it was pretty much implied because there was so much focus around God and church and all of that. So I was glad when you started coming over here. I guess that's all I have to say.
Greg, one thing, at Live and Let Live, I was never made to feel funny about that. I always said God as I don't understand him. And, I thought that, my ego told me that I don't understand him, but I don't think anybody else does either. And, but I was never made to feel funny about that over there, but just, then it got about how they started reading the blue card about please refine your discussions to alcohol or something about that. I don't think refine is the right word, but confine. All right. I was close.
Yeah.
My name's Kevin. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Kevin.
Glad to be here this evening and have a secular speaker meeting to come to. Thank you. Thank you, Simon. We appreciate it. And Tom, I wanted to come here especially tonight to hear you because I knew that you had troubles with your home group. My home group, after many years, when I announced that I was an atheist and started doing beginners meetings, I was told by the steering committee to not lead meetings anymore at the group. So that's why, I came to seek out a secular meeting, because it had to be more tolerant than the fundamentalist religiosity that I got a big dose of, and that I'm still working on that resentment. So it takes me a while. But it was I'd never heard your entire story, and I wanted to hear it. So it was as entertaining and informative as I thought it would be. So thank you for speaking. We appreciate it.
Hello, my name is Douglas, and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Douglas.
Yes, I really wanted to come and hear you speak. I've been fortunate enough to grab Petrie with you and go see a baseball game and go see theater with you and do some different things. So I've caught pieces of your story, but I haven't been able to catch the whole part of it. I definitely remember having the exact same thought of what's a good pothead job? Like, how can I be a regular stoner? How can I wake up, get stoned, go to work stoned, and come home stoned? Like, a good paid job is for that guy. And the only reason why I became a truck driver is because I worked at FedEx, and in my generation, we know how to fake piss test. It takes $10 in about any convenience store on every block around the corner to go get fake pee, and you warm it up and blah, 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 blah. If you really want to know, Google it. So I actually have, out of over a dozen urine analysis, I've taken one real one. I took one not too long ago at Shawnee Mission while I was doing IOP with them. I was real proud of that because I was just like, yes, it's been over a month. I'm going to do this. And instead of like, I'm going to actually be clean. And I did it for real. And that was the only reason why I was able to land a job like that. And it always pissed me off with the other harder drugs because they leave your system in 3 days. But if you smoke weed, you got anywhere between 30 and 60. And I had a lot of resentment towards harder drugs for that, even though I liked harder drugs. Then definitely hearing about your sexuality and how that is involved a lot with your use and your addictions. I think that is the case for a lot of people, and it's the case for myself. And then on the state of needing to be an alcoholic to be in AA, I think we should come up with a different name of just like Addicted Anonymous should be AA versus Alcoholic Anonymous. I want to say it was Lee one time talked about just recovery, that we're in just recovery, whether you're recovering from codependency or this drug, that drug, whatever. And I think it's whether your choice was crystal or my choice was alcohol, but I liked all other drugs. I just didn't have the greatest access to them. If I would have had access to them, I would have done them just as much as I would have done alcohol. So I think it all has similarities and has similar stories. So I think we all should be able to come into the same room, and to segregate people out is kind of just total bullshit. Other than that, just it's great to hear your story, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Douglas.
Hi, I'm Marley. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Marley.
This is my first speaker meeting, and I came specifically because I heard it was you, Tom.
Oh, well, thank you.
I fell off the AA wagon. I didn't fall off the wagon. I stopped attending AA for a few months, and I'm trying to get back into it, and I have always adored you. I always felt, even though you were talking about addiction, to drugs, there were always very similar parallels to my story with alcohol, especially when it comes to intimacy and those sort of things. Like, I've got a little over 20 months and I still haven't figured out dating while sober. I've just kind of given up on that. It's fine. And so I wanted to come and hear your full story. And it was really great. Like, I found myself like listening to you talk, and I had never noticed before that you had a Southern accent until you started talking about the South. And then I was like, how did I never hear that before? I've always really enjoyed your shares and spending time with you. And so I wanted to come and support you through this and listen to you speak, because I don't think that recovery is just for alcoholics. And I don't know why anybody would ever like kick somebody out of a group. Like, if you were finding success in recovery, why remove somebody? That just seems like a dick move, but I don't know. But yeah, anyway, thank you for my first speakers meeting. I'm going to pass.
Thank you, Marley. I feel likewise about you. Oh. Did you cause the lights to go out?
No, well, they just go out at other times, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm Kana, and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Kana.
I want to thank you for sharing at this meeting. It's very nice, and I always like your shares a lot. And I find it really odd that I've thought about it a lot, and I don't understand why anyone would keep like addicts out of Alcoholics Anonymous, other than the name. It's like that's literally the only reason.
Yeah, there's a long history of that.
It seems very old-fashioned. But I also agree with you and Lee that thinking is not a good idea. And with that, I'll pass.
Thank you.
I'm John. I'm an alcoholic. It's my favorite meeting of the week, and it was really nice to hear you.
Well, thank you.
So the only thing I'm going to say is I'm going to share a story about the person who, the AA Nazi, who came to me one time and said, "Are you guys an AA meeting?" And I said, "Well, sure we are. Why would you say that?" "Well, I hear there's someone in your meeting that introduces themselves as an addict."
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, well, shoot, you can introduce yourself as anything you want to, you know? So I don't know where they're coming off with that stuff. Yeah. But every once in a while they have to have a little witch hunt, I guess, and kind of purify the rooms. But I'm glad that you're part of our group. I'm so happy to have you here.
Well, actually, Live and Let Live, I still go there sometimes to the noon meeting. They have a noon meeting every day. And they actually have come over to the light side, and all their meetings are open, and, for addicts or alcoholics or anything now. So they have, they will have group consciousness votes about it, and every time it overwhelmingly passes that, especially in, it probably started sooner in the gay world, but for a long time now there's probably not many people are just solely alcoholics that have never gotten involved with anything else. It's pretty rare these days. I would say from like the 80s on or 70s on. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Tom. Does anybody else have? Yes.
Tom, would you be willing to talk a little bit more about your notion of peace? You mentioned that a couple of times, and I thought that was really a neat concept. Just something I think we'd all benefit from reflecting on maybe a little bit more.
Sure. Okay. So, like I said, like serenity, it sounded, and that never really sounded good to me, because I was always wanting to go, like, to stimulant, to go the other way. But what has happened this time is I have discovered that there is pleasure in the everyday things. And, and when I feel peace, I feel like there's nothing dragging me anywhere. I can enjoy sitting, going home, and I live alone. But I'm not lonely at home. I enjoy going home and like cooking a little bit of supper and sitting on the couch with my dog and watch a little bit of mindless TV. Sometimes good TV, but and I sleep really well. But I also find it when I do things that are somewhat exciting, like when I get an acting job or when, I go to a movie or I play golf. A lot of you know that I play golf a lot, and I'm terrible. But it's another one of the things that, where the thing about doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Well, that's me in golf. It's just like that, so I comprehend what was meant all along by serenity. And I realize that it's a state of mind that is there no matter if you're relaxing, because it sounded like to me that's just all. Serenity is always being relaxed or in the state of relaxing. But what I've understood is, and I love the way the promise is stated, we comprehend the word serenity and we will know peace. And so that's just the word peace has been more meaningful to me, rather than serenity, because that's what it feels like, when it feels like, like that whatever I do, I'm at peace. And, it's not like there's no stress in my life. It's gotten a lot better. But there's occasionally some stress in my life. I've been very lucky to not have anything major happen during these 10 years. I've had a wreck or two, but not hurt. But anyway, it just makes me, I appreciate sobriety much more during this period of sobriety that I've had. It's like I'm between 10 and 11 years now. I really appreciate being sober now. I know how to appreciate being sober. I can look back on all of the wild times and the highs and the lows with all of that for what it really was. And I can see it for how ridiculous it was. But in the beginning, it was like, and I've said this a lot, and everybody's heard me say this 1,000 times. But for this period, when I started 10 and a half years ago, it was, I had two options: get sober or party on out, and hope that I died before the money ran out. And that sounded like I know that sounds stupid, but it sounded like a great option. Of course, I never fantasized about getting ill and lingering on or anything like that. It was always like, one day I'll do too much and I'll go out in the throes of orgasm. I'll have a heart attack and die. So that was what I fantasized about when I said, I'm gonna party on out and hope that I die before the money runs out. But never like getting really ill and lingering or anything like that. But I hope that explains it. It's kind of like it's almost a spiritual feeling. That's probably chemicals, the way that my body chemistry and my brain chemistry is now. But I know I kind of take care of it and I like it. I don't think it's, related to God necessarily. And I'm still agnostic. I'm not I'm not a sworn atheist. I just know that I do know that it's not, that there's not a man with white hair in a robe and sort of a Santa Claus in the sky that you can pray to and have things, given to you. It's like, and one of the most ridiculous things to me is like people pray on a football game. It's like, I always think, why would God care which team or would help one team over another win a football game? But anyway, I'm beginning to ramble, so I'll just shut up.
I just want to. There's another part to that story about going out in the throes of orgasm, and that part about how you were going to do it for the good of all mankind.
That I didn't tell about that. Yeah, there was one point in my sobriety where I used the How It Works that was read, and I decided that I was going to, I was an addict. And what does an addict do? An addict uses drugs. And I really liked the How It Works, where it said there are those who do not recover are people who cannot be honest with themselves. And I really like the next part. They are not at fault. And I hung on to that. So I said, okay, so I'm exposed to the program. People in the program know about me. They'll see what it's like for me to go out, to continue on with my my active addiction. And so they can, maybe learn from me how to be sober, because they wouldn't want to be like me. So it's kind of like I had a Jesus complex, putting myself on the cross to be the savior of all I was taking all the drugs for everybody else.
Martyr.
Yeah, the addiction martyr, right? Yeah, so that they could be saved.
It didn't work.
Here we are. Yeah. Thanks for reminding me of that. I forgot to bring that up. Yeah.
I just wanted to highlight one thing of what you said about the big difference between Sprint and Garmin and the small victories. I feel like the small victories are super important. I feel like that's why, as stupid as I think it is to wake up and make your bed just because you're going to get right back into it later, but that it's a tiny little victory, that it's there. It's a tiny little victory to go do this. But in skateboarding, just before I go and do anything that's hard, I make a loop around the park. And then I do this one little thing, and then I do this one little thing. And I think the small victories really help. I think some people are built a little better to be able to handle those big projects and those big epic failures. But I think those small victories just, they start to snowball. And they start small, but once they start snowballing, you got this nice big victory. And then kind of going back onto the allowing addicts and other people into AA meetings, it's been brought up recently to me about our younger generation. We usually don't do one drug. We usually do any kind of drug that we can get our fucking hands on. I don't care if it's pills. I don't care. Oh, you got heroin today? Oh, you're going to bring Coke and throw it onto the coffee table? Sweet deal. Let's party. So I feel like definitely with our generation, and as a kid that I was in a program with, he didn't say he was an addict to anything. He was just, I'm an addict to more. just whatever it is, I want more. I don't care if it's sex, drugs, whatever. I just want more. So I think as these types of meetings progress, and as more of young people keep coming into it, I think it's just going to progress to that way because that's what we've done. We have so much. We can buy drugs on the internet. I can buy drugs by like clicking my phone and not even paying you cash. I can pay you over an app to get drugs. Like, so our instant access to everything, I think it's gonna be impossible to segregate. Okay, only this guy can be in here, and only this drug can be in here, and only this drug can be in here. But I really wanted to highlight more again on the small victories. I think the small victories are really hopeful for people in early sobriety, and then even beyond. And I pass again.
All right. Did you have anything you wanted to add, Tom? Okay. No, thank you. We've got this meeting here Saturdays, Mondays, and Wednesdays across the street. We've got Free Thinkers at 7 p.m. Tuesdays, Thursdays, also at 7 p.m. We've got the Agnostics group, and Fridays at noon and Saturdays at noon. Sundays at 10 a.m. at KU Medical Center. I think that does it. Good job.